In a world constantly bombarding us with stress, distractions, and overwhelming emotions, finding peace might feel like an impossible dream. But what if I told you that there's a powerful practice that can help you remain unshaken, no matter what life throws your way? Welcome to the world of Buddhism, where the art of equanimity allows us to face the storm with a calm mind and a steady heart. In the Buddhist tradition, there's a practice that teaches us how to act as if nothing bothers us, no matter the challenges we encounter. It's not about ignoring reality, but about cultivating a deep sense of inner peace, a mindset that keeps us balanced even in the face of life's inevitable ups and downs. This guide will explore how Buddhism shows us how to embrace life's fluctuations without being disturbed by them. Through the teachings of mindfulness, detachment, and compassion, we can learn to face the world with unshakable calm. If you're ready to unlock the secret to a peaceful, balanced life, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the upcoming chapters on mindfulness, detachment, and compassion. Let's journey together to discover how to live a life free from unnecessary disturbance, one step at a time. Chapter 1. The Nature of Suffering and Attachment. At the core of Buddhist philosophy lies the profound concept of dukkha, which is often translated as suffering, dissatisfaction, or unease. This term encapsulates the unavoidable challenges that every human being faces as part of existence. According to the teachings of the Buddha, suffering is not an incidental part of life, but rather an inherent aspect of the human condition. It arises from a fundamental truth: nothing in life is permanent. All things, whether they are people, possessions, or experiences, are subject to change, decay, and eventual loss. This transient nature of life creates an underlying unease that persists in our hearts and minds. The Buddha's first noble truth presents suffering as universal, stating that no one is exempt from it. Whether we are rich or poor, young or old, suffering will inevitably touch our lives in various forms, whether physical, emotional, or mental. We cannot escape it. This acceptance of suffering as a universal truth is central to Buddhist practice. It allows us to approach life with a sense of understanding and humility, recognizing that all beings experience pain and hardship in one way or another. The second noble truth provides insight into the cause of suffering. The Buddha identified tanha, craving or desire, as the root cause of dukkha. This craving is not just for material possessions, but extends to our attachments to people, experiences, and even abstract ideas. We tend to crave things that we do not have, believing that acquiring them will bring us happiness or fulfillment. Similarly, we fear losing what we already possess, whether it's a relationship, an object, or a sense of security. This fear and desire create a cycle of attachment that binds us to a constant state of yearning and dissatisfaction. In Buddhist thought, attachment is seen as the main driver of suffering. It is the tendency to hold on to things as if they were permanent, even though everything in life is subject to change. This attachment blinds us to the natural ebb and flow of life, and when things inevitably change, when relationships end, possessions are lost, or circumstances shift, we are left in pain. This is because we cling to the illusion of permanence, and when that illusion is shattered, it creates emotional turmoil. Attachment does not only refer to our relationship with material possessions, but also to our emotional attachments. In Buddhist philosophy, emotions are seen as temporary states that arise in response to external stimuli or internal thoughts. However, when we become overly attached to our emotions, whether it's joy, sadness, anger, or fear, we lose sight of their impermanence. We begin to identify with them, allowing them to define us and dictate our actions. When we cling to emotions like anger or fear, for example, we become consumed by them. our sense of self becomes intertwined with these emotional states, and we start to react impulsively as if these emotions were permanent aspects of our identity. This emotional attachment leads to a lack of control over our responses, and we become trapped in a cycle of reactivity that causes further suffering. On the other hand, when we view our emotions with mindfulness, recognizing that they arise, exist, and eventually fade away, we gain the freedom to respond with calmness and clarity. This is where the Buddhist practice of detachment becomes crucial. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. Rather, it's about developing the ability to observe emotions without becoming attached to them. By cultivating this awareness, we create space between ourselves and our emotional reactions. This space allows us to act with intention, rather than being swept away by the tides of emotional turbulence. To begin the journey of overcoming attachment, the first step is to recognize the impermanence of all things. This includes not only the external circumstances of our lives, but also the internal states of our minds. The Buddha taught that everything in life, whether it's our possessions, our relationships, or even our thoughts and emotions, is fleeting. Nothing is permanent, and everything is subject to change. By embracing this truth, we free ourselves from the tyranny of attachment. When we understand that nothing in life is fixed or eternal, we can let go of our need to hold on to things. This doesn't mean we abandon our loved ones or stop enjoying the pleasures of life. Rather, it means we stop clinging to them as though they are the source of our happiness. We learn to appreciate them for what they are in the present moment, without needing to control or possess them. One of the central practices in Buddhism is mindfulness, which helps cultivate awareness of the present moment. Through mindfulness, we can observe our thoughts, emotions, and desires as they arise, without becoming attached to them. This practice teaches us to see things as they truly are, impermanent, interconnected, and ever-changing. It allows us to live with greater ease and peace, no longer subject to the endless cycle of craving and aversion that leads to suffering. It's important to note that detachment in Buddhism does not mean indifference or apathy. Detachment is not about withdrawing from the world or becoming emotionally numb. Rather, it is about developing a healthy relationship with the world and its fleeting nature. By releasing our attachment to outcomes, possessions, and even emotions, we create space for true freedom. This freedom allows us to experience life fully without being overwhelmed by it. We can engage with the world, loving, caring, and working, without becoming overly attached to the results. We can enjoy the joys of life without clinging to them, and face the inevitable challenges without being devastated by them. In this way, detachment leads to a deeper form of engagement with life, one that is grounded in wisdom and compassion rather than fear and desire. In conclusion, understanding the nature of suffering and attachment is fundamental to the Buddhist path. By recognizing the impermanence of all things, we can free ourselves from the cycle of craving and aversion that perpetuates our suffering. Through mindfulness and detachment, we learn to live in harmony with the ebb and flow of life, embracing both its joys and its challenges with equanimity and peace. Chapter 2. The Practice of Mindfulness, Sati. Mindfulness, known in Buddhism as sati, is the practice of being fully present in the moment, aware of our thoughts, feelings, and surroundings without attachment or judgment. It's about observing what is happening within and around us with clarity and acceptance. Unlike ordinary attention, which is often scattered or driven by habitual thinking, mindfulness involves a deeper awareness of each experience as it unfolds, without trying to change or control it. At its essence, mindfulness is about being in the present. It asks us to step away from the automatic reactions to our environment or emotions, allowing us to see things clearly for what they are. This practice helps us break free from the mental patterns of distraction and habitual responses that often lead to stress, anxiety, and confusion. Instead of rushing through life, mindfulness allows us to experience each moment fully and consciously, fostering a sense of peace and understanding. In the context of acting as if nothing bothers you, mindfulness plays a vital role. It enables us to approach challenging situations with greater awareness and composure without reacting impulsively or emotionally. When we are mindful, we can see our thoughts and emotions as they arise, but we don't have to identify with them or let them dictate our actions. This shift in perspective is empowering. Rather than being swept away by feelings of anger, frustration, or anxiety, mindfulness allows us to observe these emotions with detachment and respond in a measured, thoughtful way. For instance, when we experience anger or frustration, mindfulness helps us recognize that these emotions are transient. They are not permanent aspects of our identity, but passing phenomena that come and go. By acknowledging the emotion without clinging to it, we avoid letting it control us. Instead of reacting to anger with impulsive actions or words, mindfulness gives us the space to pause, reflect, and choose how to respond with wisdom and balance. Mindfulness is often associated with meditation, but it extends far beyond formal sitting practice. It can be integrated into every aspect of daily life, transforming routine activities into opportunities for practice. Whether we are eating, walking, working, or conversing with others, mindfulness encourages us to bring our full attention to the present moment. Instead of being distracted by thoughts of the past or future, we focus on the task at hand, cultivating a deep sense of awareness in all that we do. One of the greatest benefits of mindfulness is its ability to enhance our emotional responses. In modern life, it's easy to become caught in the habit of reacting automatically to situations, often with frustration or impatience. Mindfulness offers us a different approach. When we are mindful, we can pause before reacting. This pause creates space between stimulus and response, allowing us to choose a more thoughtful, measured reaction. For example, when faced with a stressful situation, instead of reacting immediately with anger or defensiveness, we can take a deep breath, observe our feelings, and respond with calmness and clarity. This space between stimulus and reaction is a key element in maintaining inner peace. When we pause before reacting, we allow ourselves time to reflect on the situation, rather than being driven by impulse or emotional reactivity. It's not about suppressing our feelings, but about recognizing them and choosing how to respond in a way that aligns with our values and intentions. By practicing mindfulness in everyday situations, we build the skill of responding thoughtfully rather than reacting reflexively. Another important aspect of mindfulness is that it encourages non-judgment. Often, we are quick to judge our own experiences, labeling them as good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant. This judgmental attitude creates a cycle of attachment and aversion, which leads to further suffering. Mindfulness invites us to observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment. When we practice mindfulness, we simply notice what arises, whether it's a thought, a feeling, or an external event, without attaching labels or judgments to it. This allows us to see things as they are, without the filter of our biases or preconceived notions. For example, if we are feeling anxious, mindfulness helps us acknowledge the anxiety without judgment. We don't need to tell ourselves that anxiety is bad or something to avoid. Instead, we simply observe it as it is, an emotion that is present in this moment. By doing so, we can reduce the power that anxiety has over us and gain a greater sense of control over our emotional state. This non-judgmental awareness is liberating because it frees us from the constant cycle of judgment that often leads to frustration and self-criticism. Incorporating mindfulness into our daily routine can be a simple yet powerful way to enhance our quality of life. The key is to practice being present, even in the most mundane tasks. Whether we're washing dishes, driving, or having a conversation, we can bring our full attention to the present moment, allowing ourselves to experience life with greater clarity and focus. Mindfulness helps us break free from the autopilot mode in which we often find ourselves, making each moment more meaningful and fulfilling. The practice of mindfulness also extends to how we engage with others. By being present in our interactions, we can listen more deeply, communicate more effectively, and respond with greater empathy and understanding. Mindfulness helps us build stronger, more compassionate relationships because it allows us to be truly present for others without distraction or judgment. In conclusion, mindfulness is not simply a technique, but a way of life. It invites us to be fully present in each moment, to observe our thoughts and emotions with clarity, and to respond with wisdom rather than reactivity. Whether through meditation or daily activities, mindfulness helps us cultivate a deeper awareness of ourselves and the world around us. By practicing mindfulness, we can navigate life with greater peace, understanding, and compassion, creating space for joy and wisdom to unfold naturally. Chapter 3. The Middle Way, Balance and Equanimity. The middle way is a central concept in Buddhism, embodying the path of moderation and balance. This teaching invites us to avoid extremes, particularly the extremes of indulgence and self-denial. When applied to emotional life, the middle way encourages us to steer clear of becoming too attached to positive emotions or overly averse to negative ones. It is a path that allows us to cultivate a sense of harmony within, regardless of what life presents to us. In the context of emotions, attachment can be a source of suffering. When we become attached to positive feelings like joy or pleasure, we set ourselves up for disappointment when those emotions inevitably fade. Life is in constant flux, and no emotion, whether positive or negative, can be permanent. If we hold on too tightly to happiness, we may find ourselves distressed when it passes, feeling as though something is wrong with us or our lives. On the other hand, when we are overly averse to negative emotions like sadness, fear, or anger, we create inner resistance that can make those emotions feel even more intense. We may try to push them away, deny them, or react defensively. This resistance only prolongs their presence and often magnifies the discomfort they bring. In Buddhist philosophy, both attachment and aversion are seen as forms of craving, grasping at what we desire and rejecting what we don't. The middle way teaches us that both of these extremes are unhelpful and that the key to emotional balance lies in embracing a more moderate and accepting approach. At the heart of this balance is equanimity, mental stability and calmness, regardless of external circumstances. Equanimity is the ability to remain unshaken and steady no matter what emotions arise. It does not mean suppressing our emotions or becoming indifferent to them. Rather, it is about recognizing that all emotions, whether pleasant or unpleasant, are part of the ever-changing nature of life. By cultivating equanimity, we learn to experience life's emotional highs and lows with a sense of peace, rather than becoming overwhelmed by them. Equanimity, therefore, is not about ignoring or rejecting emotions. It is about developing the ability to observe them without being controlled by them. Whether we are feeling joy, sadness, anger, or fear, we do not let these emotions dictate our behavior or disturb our inner peace. This practice allows us to face challenges with a clear and calm mind, understanding that emotions are temporary and that they do not define us. In practical terms, equanimity allows us to act as if nothing bothers us, because we no longer become attached to emotions or disturbed by them. When we encounter difficulties, instead of being swept away by a rush of frustration, anxiety, or sadness, we can respond with clarity and wisdom. This does not mean that we become cold or unfeeling. Rather, we develop the strength to experience emotions without allowing them to take over. Like a rock in the middle of a turbulent river, we remain steady, unaffected by the current of emotional upheaval. For example, when faced with criticism, many of us may feel defensive or angry. These emotions are natural responses, but if we are not mindful, they can control us, leading to impulsive reactions that we later regret. With equanimity, we can acknowledge these feelings without identifying with them. We recognize that criticism, like any emotion, is a passing experience. Instead of reacting defensively, we can take a moment to reflect on the feedback with an open mind, using it as an opportunity for growth rather than a threat to our self-worth. Similarly, when we experience failure or setback, it is easy to fall into despair or frustration. However, when we practice equanimity, we understand that failure is part of the human experience. It does not define us. Rather than being consumed by disappointment, we learn to accept it as an inevitable part of the journey. Equanimity helps us maintain perspective and resilience so that we can rise from setbacks with a sense of calm and determination, rather than being immobilized by negative emotions. Equanimity is also a crucial tool in dealing with the ups and downs of everyday life. For instance, when something unexpected happens, like receiving good news or facing an unpleasant situation, we can practice equanimity by remaining balanced. If we receive praise or recognition, we do not let it inflate our ego or sense of self-importance. Similarly, when confronted with challenges, we don't let fear or frustration control our reactions. Instead, we learn to observe the situation with a clear mind, responding appropriately without being swept away by either joy or sorrow. One of the key aspects of equanimity is recognizing the impermanence of emotions and experiences. Emotions are not permanent fixtures. They are like clouds passing across the sky, temporarily obscuring our inner calm. By embracing this understanding, we free ourselves from the need to hold on to emotions or fight against them. We no longer view emotions as obstacles to peace, but as natural phenomena that come and go. In addition, equanimity fosters a sense of compassion and empathy. When we are balanced in our own emotions, we are better able to be present for others in their moments of difficulty. We can offer support without becoming overwhelmed by their emotions or reacting in a way that creates more disturbance. This ability to stay centered helps us build stronger, more compassionate relationships, rooted in understanding rather than reactivity. In conclusion, the middle way teaches us to avoid extremes in both attachment and aversion, leading us to a more balanced and peaceful existence. By cultivating equanimity, we learn to navigate the emotional ups and downs of life with greater ease and wisdom. Rather than being controlled by our emotions, we gain the ability to observe them without attachment, allowing us to respond to life's challenges with calm and clarity. Equanimity is not a state of indifference, but of deep emotional maturity, an ability to experience life fully without being overwhelmed by its fluctuations. Through this practice, we find true inner peace and balance. Chapter 4. The role of compassion, karuna, and non-attachment. One of the most profound and beautiful teachings in Buddhism is the cultivation of karuna, or compassion. Compassion in Buddhism is not merely about feeling sympathy for the suffering of others, but about actively engaging to alleviate that suffering. It is a deeply human quality that fosters connection, understanding, and kindness. However, in Buddhist practice, compassion is not simply about emotional reaction. It is about cultivating a balanced, mindful response that integrates equanimity and non-attachment. The teaching of acting as if nothing bothers you does not imply that we should become cold, indifferent, or detached from the suffering of others. On the contrary, it emphasizes that we must remain compassionate and empathic while also maintaining our inner peace. This distinction is important. While we deeply empathize with another's pain and suffering, we do not let ourselves be consumed by it. Compassion is about being present with the suffering of others without losing our emotional balance or allowing their pain to overwhelm us. It is through non-attachment that we can truly offer compassionate assistance without being personally disturbed by what we encounter. At the heart of compassionate action is the recognition that all beings suffer in various ways, but suffering does not define them. In the Buddhist framework, compassion arises naturally from a peaceful and centered mind. When we are free from attachment and emotional disturbance, we can act from a place of deep understanding and equanimity. It is not compassion born from pity, but from a place of mutual understanding and shared humanity. In fact, compassion is the natural expression of a peaceful mind, one that recognizes the impermanence of suffering and the interdependence of all beings. One of the key challenges in practicing compassion is learning how to engage with the suffering of others without absorbing it or becoming emotionally overwhelmed. This is where the practice of non-attachment becomes critical. Non-attachment in this context does not mean detachment or indifference, but rather a balanced state where we do not allow the pain of others to disrupt our inner peace. Non-attachment allows us to help others without taking on their suffering as our own. This is especially important because if we become too attached to the emotions of others, we may lose our capacity to help them effectively. A classic Buddhist story beautifully illustrates this balance between compassion and non-attachment. In the story, a monk is approached by a woman who is grieving the loss of her child. The woman, overwhelmed by grief, expresses her sorrow to the monk, asking him for a solution to her pain. The monk listens to her with great empathy, but he does not take on her emotional burden. He offers her compassion, but remains rooted in his own inner peace. He understands that her suffering is temporary, and although he feels for her, he does not allow her grief to disturb his own emotional balance. The monk's compassionate response is one of emotional wisdom, offering support without becoming entangled in the woman's pain. This story is a reminder that, in practicing compassion, we must learn to maintain a sense of emotional clarity. We must help others without losing ourselves in their suffering. Non-attachment enables us to remain balanced, acting from a place of deep understanding and presence while still offering support and kindness. This way, we do not contribute to more emotional turbulence, but offer a stable and calm presence that can be a great source of healing for others. When we practice compassion in our daily lives, we learn to engage with others' suffering without allowing it to disrupt our own peace. Whether we are consoling a friend who is going through a difficult time, helping someone in need, or listening to a colleague express frustration, the key is to stay grounded in our own emotional stability. Compassion, when combined with non-attachment, allows us to be fully present with others, acknowledging their pain without becoming overwhelmed by it. By maintaining a peaceful mind, we can offer practical help, encouragement, or simply a listening ear without becoming emotionally entangled in the process. This balanced approach to compassion also extends to how we deal with our own suffering. In Buddhism, we are taught not to become overly attached to our own pain or difficulties, but to view them with the same equanimity we extend to others. In moments of personal suffering, we can practice compassion toward ourselves, recognizing that suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience and does not define our worth. Just as we would not berate a friend who is struggling, we can be kind and gentle with ourselves during times of hardship. Cultivating both compassion and non-attachment is essential for maintaining emotional well-being in our interactions with others. When we practice this balance, we become a source of calm and stability for those around us. Rather than being overwhelmed by the suffering of the world, we learn to respond with clarity and care. In this way, we can help alleviate the pain of others without becoming overwhelmed by it ourselves. Furthermore, as we cultivate non-attachment in our practice, we also come to understand that all experiences, pleasant or painful, are temporary. Just as our own emotions and circumstances change, so too do those of others. By embracing this impermanence, we can offer compassion from a place of wisdom, knowing that even the deepest suffering is not permanent. This perspective helps us to offer help with a sense of humility, understanding that while we may offer comfort or aid, it is the individual's journey that ultimately leads them to healing. In conclusion, the role of compassion in Buddhism is to connect us to the suffering of others in a way that fosters empathy and support, without becoming entangled in their pain. Compassion, when balanced with non-attachment, allows us to act with wisdom and clarity, offering our help without losing our inner peace. It is through this combination of compassion and equanimity that we can become a steady source of support and healing for others, while also preserving our emotional stability. In this way, we learn to cultivate a deep, loving presence that benefits both ourselves and those around us. Chapter 5. Letting Go and Accepting Impermanence. Buddhism teaches the profound practice of letting go, also known as renunciation, as a powerful path to freedom. However, the idea of letting go is often misunderstood. It is not about abandoning our responsibilities or desires, but rather about releasing our attachment to the outcomes of those desires. It is a mental and emotional practice of detachment from the need to control every situation, outcome, or relationship in our lives. When we learn to let go of our attachment, we free ourselves from the anxiety and suffering that often arise when we try to control the uncontrollable aspects of life. Letting go, in its essence, is about accepting the impermanence of all things. It is a recognition that nothing in life, whether our emotions, relationships, or material possessions, is permanent. Everything changes, evolves, and eventually fades away. When we deeply understand and accept this truth, we are able to cultivate a sense of peace, grounded in the knowledge that change is not something to fear, but something natural. The very nature of life is change, and by embracing this, we can live with greater ease, less resistance, and more acceptance. In the Buddhist tradition, letting go is not a passive act of resignation, but an active choice to live fully in the present moment without the burden of attachment. When we cling to expectations or outcomes, we trap ourselves in a cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. We become fixated on how things should be, how they were, or how we want them to be. This constant striving leads to frustration because, as the Buddha taught, nothing in life is ever truly under our control. To act as if nothing bothers you is, in many ways, a manifestation of the practice of letting go. It is the ability to release the weight of our attachments to desires, outcomes, and situations. When we stop clinging to expectations, we create the mental space for peace, acceptance, and freedom to enter our lives. Letting go, however, does not mean becoming indifferent or disengaged from life. It does not mean that we stop caring about others or about our own well-being. Rather, it means that we engage with life fully, but without the weight of attachment to specific outcomes. This is a subtle but powerful shift in perspective. Instead of tying our happiness or peace to how things turn out, we learn to remain balanced and equanimous regardless of the results. Life is unpredictable, And if we constantly tie our sense of self and well-being to external circumstances, we set ourselves up for disappointment and suffering. By letting go, we free ourselves from this cycle. The practice of letting go is deeply intertwined with the Buddhist understanding of impermanence, anicca. Everything in life is transient, and the sooner we accept this, the less we will suffer. We might be attached to our possessions, our relationships, our career goals, or our personal achievements. But when these things change or are lost, as they inevitably will be, we experience pain and grief because we have clung to them as if they were permanent. However, by cultivating the awareness that all things are temporary, we learn to embrace the fluidity of life rather than resist it. This acceptance of impermanence brings a sense of relief and freedom. When we let go of attachment to outcomes, we open ourselves to the flow of life. We can meet each moment with an open heart, free from the weight of expectation. This is not to say that we should abandon our goals or desires altogether. Rather, we can pursue them without clinging to the need for them to unfold in a specific way. We do our best in the present moment, knowing that the future is uncertain and that all things are subject to change. In practical terms, letting go may involve examining the areas of our lives where we are most attached. This could be an attachment to our material possessions, our status, our relationships, or even our self-image. We may ask ourselves, what are we holding on to that is no longer serving us? What expectations do we have that are creating unnecessary stress or disappointment? By observing our attachments, we can begin to loosen our grip on them, one by one. This practice requires patience and self-compassion, as letting go is not always easy. It can bring up feelings of fear, sadness, or insecurity as we confront the loss of what we hold dear. Yet, it is precisely through this letting go that we create space for new growth, freedom, and peace. Letting go also means relinquishing our desire for control. We often strive to control every aspect of our lives, our work, relationships, health, and even the way others perceive us. But the reality is that we can control very little in life. Life is full of uncertainties and unpredictabilities, and trying to control everything only leads to anxiety and frustration. Letting go of the need to control and instead embracing the flow of life allows us to live with more peace and ease. This does not mean being passive or resigned, but rather being flexible and adaptable in the face of change. Ultimately, letting go leads to true freedom. When we stop clinging to our desires, expectations, and outcomes, we are no longer bound by the need for external circumstances to be a certain way in order for us to feel happy or at peace. This is the true freedom that Buddhism speaks of. Freedom from the cycle of craving and aversion, from the desire for things to remain static, and from the fear of change. As we let go of what bothers us, whether it's a past hurt, an unmet expectation, or the fear of the future, we make room for deeper peace, wisdom, and compassion to arise within us. When we stop resisting the impermanence of life, we become more fully present in the moment, appreciating each experience for what it is, without clinging to it or pushing it away. This freedom allows us to face life's challenges with grace, knowing that we are not defined by them. We can let go of the things that weigh us down and find peace in the present moment, knowing that everything, including our worries and struggles, is temporary. In conclusion, the practice of letting go is central to the Buddhist path of freedom. By releasing our attachment to outcomes, desires, and expectations, we create the mental and emotional space for peace, acceptance, and growth. Letting go is not about giving up or becoming passive. It is about embracing life's impermanence with grace and wisdom. When we let go, we open ourselves to the fullness of life, free from the constraints of attachment and the fear of change. In this way, we find true freedom and the peace that comes from accepting the ever-changing nature of existence. Conclusion: living with peace, wisdom, and clarity. In conclusion, acting as if nothing bothers you is not about pretending that life is perfect, nor is it about avoiding emotions or difficulties. It's about cultivating a mind of mindfulness, equanimity, and compassion, so that we can respond to life's challenges with wisdom and clarity. By practicing mindfulness, detachment, and compassion, we can develop the ability to remain calm and centered no matter what life presents. When we let go of attachment, embrace impermanence, and cultivate balance, we unlock the profound peace that is the true nature of our being. So, remember the teachings of Buddhism. Act as if nothing bothers you, because in reality, nothing does. It's only our attachment to the passing nature of things that creates disturbance. By letting go, we find freedom and peace within.